Hi, everybody. I thought I'd jump in while Stuart was trying to drink. Welcome
Bonjour.
to, what are we? Readers of the Lost Art. That's who we are. The senility has started early today.
What's 8 in French? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Wheat!
Édition 8 the Gruppo reading, the Proust, Marcel
I've
Proust.
no idea, everyone, why Stuart's trying to speak in Welsh, but there you go. It makes him feel involved.
You'll get deported. You have to
Right.
be careful.
So we have Stuart, we have Stu Gore's Master, as I'm calling myself, which reminds me, at the end of the month, we've got Frankenstein on the live stream, which should be good. Darren F. McGee will be with us, as well as James, I think.
Oh, nice.
And then shortly after that, it's all happening. We're doing Moby Dick, which those of you who I'm in regular contact with online will know when I used to be a male stripper. That was my stage name. So it's all looking good, bringing back memories and, resonances and all sorts.
Yeah.
Today, just to give you a hint of what occurs off camera, Stuart basically bullies me. And whereas I'm very laid back about the very, very slow but intimate progress we've made, a bit like Barry White and the Satin Sheets with In Search of Lost Time, Stuart's a bit more rip it all off straight away type of guy, and he wants to make more progress. So we're going to try and do, if I shut up and we just get on with it, we're going to try and do about 50,
keep going.
50 pages today.
You need to buy me some time because the PDFs disappeared. So I'm trying to find where the PDF's gone. So yeah, keep babbling.
So over to you, Stuart. So what we're going to do is we'll aim to do hopefully around about 50 pages today. We're still in the second part of Combray. And then there will come bits in the novel from memory whereby not a lot happens. It's always beautiful writing, but there are some quite slow parts. And what we'll do there is try and speed through. So I think it's a polite way when Stuart says he wants to make quicker progress. He doubts my longevity. He doesn't think I'm going to be around for long enough to finish it, which is a bit insulting, but there you go. So if we can...
In search of a lost podcast.
In search of Paul's longevity. I keep telling everyone I take fish oil tablets. And I've started eating a lot of various nuts, which apparently are good for you.
They're really good, yeah. Unsalted, like mixed nuts.
Yeah.
I think, because you get the micronutrients, don't you? Like cesium and polonium and all these things that your body needs.
Right.
So it was Combray II. I think we started Combray II.
It was about the filthy quilt, wasn't it? We ended on.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get where, because we're on this.
The flowered quilt. Why don't you just do a quick search for quilt? Occam's razor Taylor.
It's not there. I tell you what it is sometimes when I search on this PDF, it's like a different translation. It doesn't come up. Bloody hell. Why is this?
Try pastry.
Pastry.
This could be a new channel, just watching Stu Gore try to look things up and failing.
Scallop shell pastry. This was we got this. Here we go. There we go, Paul. We're here now.
There you go. I got you there.
That's
Thank
it.
you.
So yeah, the problem I've been having, actually, it does this sometimes, is that if I accidentally minimize the PDF, then it goes off the screen for some reason. It does this sometimes, and other times it doesn't.
Do you know how little people care about your technical complaints, Stuart?
They care little, but I was hoping most of them in the comments. I was hoping the 2 people in the comments might have a solution.
Are you going to be able to get that bigger? I'm just looking at.
Yeah, I'm going to zoom in now.
Right, I need to try and enlarge my screen. Like, that's brilliant.
That's it. Yeah, it's as big as it gets. Yeah.
Right, I always do this because now I can't see the comments. But no, that is about. That's good. Right. So where are we? Right, you need to go further down, yeah.
Yeah, so we got to about here.
Right, you had some particular quotes you wanted to look at, didn't you?
Yeah, so I just wanted, before we get there, if there's anything before that, but I just want to strip straight to the ant, when he talks about the ant and the tea sign, when he tips out the medicinal tea sign.
Right, so the only thing I'd say before that is the I like, well, overall, for the section as a whole, what I like is it begins to, the whole first part of Swan's Way is, I didn't get my goodnight kiss from Mama and Papa, and all this, and it puts people off. Whereas you're beginning to get into the realm whereby the more adult type themes come in, and the mortality. So Aunt Leonie is basically on her final legs. I can relate to that, and he's still a young little boy. But then when we'll get to the bit where he goes into the church, the local church figures largely, and people might find that slightly boring, but I find it, again, it's very implicit. It's about, because the whole book's about passage of time. Yep. It's about mortality. It's about the longevity we were talking about just then of a church that never changes. And we'll get to the bit where the cavalry come in, but there's also part of the book is about a world that never seemed to change, but actually has gone. That world is no longer.
Yeah. This whole bit we're going to do today, this whole 50 pages, as you say, it's really focused on fleshing out what Proust is talking about in terms of time, like the dimensions of time, physicality, subjectivity, how places and things themselves record time.
There's just a funny bit where she says he's talking about the ant. She never spoke save in low tones because she believed that there was something broken in her head and floating loose there, which she might displace by talking too loud. Yep. As someone, so she's like a mad but funny hypochondriac. As someone who talks to themselves, Stuart, do you relate to that?
I do. I think sometimes like the inner voices creep out, and if people are around, that you can get you into trouble.
Well, you're talking to someone. My wife has come into the living room wondering who was in there with me because I was laughing hysterically, and I thought of something funny.
Yeah, well, I do the same. I just make noises and things in my head. I was actually watching a video on YouTube the other day of a guy teaching a parrot how to talk, and this parrot was just like basically it's like sounding like someone with Tourette syndrome, just saying funny words. And he was saying is it a Disney film, the film Shrek?
Yeah.
He taught the parrot to say Shrek, and this parrot just going Shrek, Shrek, Shrek. And I do exactly the same sometimes. I mean, not necessarily with Shrek, but I'll just pick a word and I'll just start saying it. It's like stress relief. It's not Tourette's because it's not a swear word, but I sympathize with the ant here. I can see she's obviously on her deathbed. She's not feeling well, the poor lass, and she's just clucking away. And
you made a big mistake. She's not in her rollers and pajamas yet, but Dollar's mum. Dollar's mum. Dollar is a parrot.
Yeah.
So. Dollar's mum will now probably send us essay length comments about how you're inaccurate about your parrot comments.
Oh well, I'm no avian expert, so I apologize, Dollar's mum, in advance.
They live forever. I was going to get a parrot years and years ago, but it's like 25, 30 years.
Yeah, some of them can get on to what 60 or 70 years, I think.
Yeah. So anyway,
pass it down through the generations. I'll have it if you pass away.
Why did you say if you pass away with a glint in your eye?
Well, I don't know, Paul. I don't know.
So basically,
deal with the devil.
Listen to this, Stuart. You've laid claim to the hypothetical parrot I'll never get, but so rapaciously greedy are you, and wanting of my early demise.
Yeah, well, I do with my parents as well. They've got a lovely dog, and I always say, "Well, we'll just make sure he's in the will," because I can't afford to buy a dog myself. But if I was gifted one, I'd be very happy with the situation.
What do you mean you can't go to the rescue centre, you pillock? I hate people who buy dogs. Anyway, I'm going to go off on a rant. So, and we wonder why we don't make much progress.
Exactly. Yeah, let's focus. In the zone.
Yeah, she used to announce them their thoughts. She used to announce them to herself in an unceasing monologue, which was her sole form of activity. That's a bit close to home for us too, isn't it?
Exactly. Let's move down a bit.
That's true, though. There's a bit where she says, in the life of complete inertia, that is close to my experience, that she led, she attached to the least of her sensations an extraordinary importance, endowed them with a motility that made it difficult for her to keep them secret. And I do find that because she's hikikomori, isn't she, in France? She's a shut-in. And there is something about, because I lead such a sedentary life now, the slightest thing. So if I have to make an online order for the weekly shop of food, it looms ahead that day as the most, onerous task humankind has ever been given, more than building the pyramids. When
Yeah,
actually it's just because my life is so, I'm like a goldfish,
yeah.
languidly floating around a tank. But it is interesting that that's what it's like, a microcosm of the novel, isn't it?
It really is
Tiny.
more like Proust himself. This is almost like a reflection of Proust and his later years with his kind of sickly disposition, stuck in the cork-lined bedroom.
Yeah, is it? He had terrible asthma, didn't he? I think that's what did for him in
Yeah,
the end.
it was asthma or something respiratory related, wasn't it? Did he have tuberculosis? Was it something to
No,
do
I
with that, or
think
was that
I think
somebody
it was
else?
pretty much just really extreme asthma, and the whole point of the cork line thing was to blot out the noise, but also dust. I think you can
Yeah,
just wipe the cork lined walls.
yeah.
Have you seen? There's a reproduction of the bedroom in a museum in Paris or whatever, and
I
it is
haven't seen
pretty
it now.
dingy. Right. So where was the first bit you wanted to look at? I think it was after waiting a minute or something.
So yeah, so it's this bit about the tea sun. Then so from memory, he goes into the room and Francois, the maid, is going to make the tea, and it's worth kind of reading it out because the tisane is like the medicine she drinks. So I think in the previous part, this is the type of tisane that they drink with the Madeleine or the Madeleine. So it's like lime blossom tea. So you can buy this nowadays in the supermarkets. It's like it's usually like advertised as like calming tea, a bit like chamomile or kind of sleep tea, before bed tea. Uh, so probably at this stage in time, it was like a medicinal thing. You went to the chemist and you said, "Okay, I'm having trouble sleeping. Can you put me up some lime blossom tea?" But the way he describes it's worth like reading out. So he says the drying of the stems had twisted them into a fantastic trellis, in the interlacings of which pale flowers opened as though painter had arranged them there, grouping them in the most decorative process. So decorative
Poses.
poses. The leaves, having lost or altered their original appearance, and this is important here, original appearance, resemble the most disparate things: the transparent wing of a fly, the blank side of a label, the petal of a rose, which had all been piled together, pounded or interwoven like the materials for a nest. Now, it's so profound because it goes back to what we covered in a previous video about, animal spirits being imbued into physical things. Bruce saying here, just something as banal as like a tea mixture contains the kind of the memory of a previous life, like the memory of a flower here. But it's all kind of crushed together and mashed. And I think what I found interesting about this is if you think of like a tea leaf, when you add water to it, it tends to expand, it rehydrates, and then it brings back the form that it previously was before it was dehydrated and turned into a tea. And it's very similar to Proust's idea of memory and the Madeleine incident, because it's like memory recall. You add the boiling water, and then what the material, what the tea used to be, kind of jumps back. So it's that kind of the physical connection again here between a physical thing, which he goes on to, we'll cover today as well, the church's physical memory. But here he's saying that this tea itself, a banal thing as a tea, is actually like a physical memory as well. But you can actually get that memory back by adding the boiling water to it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, there's two things. One is I risk setting you off. I can't get my computer to stay still. I risk setting you off on a raj about, well, not raj, but a discussion of Heidegger's notion of unconcealment and poesis and bringing forth, because that's effectively what the tea leaves are doing.
Yeah.
So there's huge philosophical background to what he's talking about, but also I have to stop myself going on a rant about supermarket tea bags and the whole idea that everything you've described isn't seen with incredibly finely chopped up tea that goes in tea bags,
In framed tea bags.
well, and in the trade they're called finings. It's the dust off the floor. It's awful quality tea, but also because they're in these horrible tea bags, you don't see everything you've just described. And I know it's such a small, pathetic point, a tea bag, but it's emblematic of what modern society is all about. You don't toddle off to your local chemist, a person whom you'd know, who's probably given you medicines for decades. Nowadays, it's probably, you're looking for your anti-fentanyl, prescription
Yeah.
as you go into this dystopian
Fentanyl section in
neighborhood.
Morrison's.
Yeah, and there's this dystopian, death. Well, what I'm thinking of some apocalyptic film, 2000 AD type, tires burning on the corner of the street, Mad
Yeah, Judge
Max.
Dredd.
Yeah, just as you're trying to buy. But this is the whole difference. This is the nostalgia to the whole novel. It is this in search of lost time. It is a time that's gone. It'll never come back, and we're just heading downhill. So, bye everyone.
on that note, yeah. Wasn't it in? You ever watch Futurama, the Matt Groening series? The guy who did
Tiny
Simpsons.
bit. I didn't like it.
Oh, yeah, it's a specific type of humor, but it's quite dark humor, and they're having it like what's called a suicide booth. So it's like a phone booth in the future that if you ever get fed up, you can go in and you put money in, and like knives and needles and things come down and send you.
Now it's just called Jurek.
Yeah. Yeah. It's called Bradford. Anyway,
keep reading.
Yeah, quickly moving on for our West Yorkshire friends. It says here that this is what you just said, Paul. The pleasure of finding that these were sprigs of real lime trees, like those I had seen. So it's this connection between the tea and like a physical thing. This was a tree, and a tree itself is like has a memory. It lives. It changes into something else. It changes into the tea, but it's not just the fact that this used to be a tree. It's like it's a memory for Proust himself. He might not have seen this original tree the tea came from, but it reminds him of memories when he had seen similar trees, just in making a tea.
Yeah, I don't mean to be too pretentious, but as you were talking about that, if you can keep it on what you've just read, because it might be worth, if you'll indulge me, if I read out my translation. And it made me think as you were talking, the act of translation is a bit like watching a tea leaf unfold. Yeah. And it can go in different directions and you don't quite know, because there aren't massive differences, but my translation's slightly different. So
it is slightly different,
yeah. So as I'm reading it, people will be able to see the difference on the screen. The drying of the stems had twisted them into a fantastic trellis, in whose interlacing the pale flowers opened, as though a painter had arranged them there, grouping them in the most decorative poses. The leaves, having lost or altered their own appearance, assumed those instead of the most incongruous things, the transparent wings of flies, or the blank sides of labels, or the petals of roses, but which had been collected and pounded, or interwoven as birds weave the material for their nests. 1,000 trifling little details, the charming prodigality of the pharmacist, details that would have been eliminated from an artificial preparation, tea bags, gave me, like a book in which one is astonished to read the name of a person whom one knows, the pleasure of finding that these were indeed the stems of real lime blossoms, like those I had seen in the Avenue de la Guerre. But it's noticeable, the differences, aren't they?
Yeah. I think with your translation, there seems to be more of an active kind of attempt to it. So I think with this is materials for a nest, it's like birds making a nest in your translation.
Yeah, it's why this is fresh in my mind as I'm doing this thing on the Odyssey, and I must have read for book one about 7 different translations, and it is absolutely intriguing. But it's also, we were making fun of Christopher Nolan's atrocious dialogue. Yeah. It was pointed out in the comments, he's based his dialogue, insofar as he's based it on anything significant, on Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey.
She's like the feminist scholar, isn't she?
Yeah, and she really takes liberties and modernizes it, and it really is this ongoing battle to do justice to the original, make it contemporary, but don't ruin it. Yeah. Because even people might wonder also, if you were reading this in French, it's not as much of an insulation from translation difficulties as you'd think, because George Steiner wrote this brilliant book called After Babel, and he points out that, for example, an English person reading Shakespeare, you have to do so much work to actually try and perceive it in the way it was originally written and the connotations words had. It's why you have to study Shakespeare, unfortunately. So he's saying that within a culture, within a language, acts of translations happen between generations. So we're doing it twice with this text. We're not reading the original French, and we're also trying to put ourselves in the eye of someone who lived at a completely different time.
Yeah.
But anyway, over to you again.
Yeah, no, I think that's the joy of it. Like, as long as you're aware that the act of translation creates something new or creates a synthesis, then I don't necessarily see a problem with it. I think it's when you take the original text, or you're trying to cram a text into a specific worldview, or you're trying to make a specific point with the translation that wasn't there in the original. I think that's when you get kind of a bit of an injustice in the process. But yeah, I love this term that uses the twilight of a flower. So he's not saying the death, that the tea isn't the death of a flower. I think using the word twilight, it's kind of like a state of purgatory, really, isn't it? It's like a middle ground. So it's not the tree itself existing, and it's not the non-existence of death. It's like the twilight. There's the potential state where you add the water, it comes back to something of an approximation of what it used to be, but then at the same time it's dry, it's been desiccated, and it's not
And
a
remember,
living thing.
like we've said, the ant is in the twilight of her days.
Exactly.
She's not going to be around for much longer.
Yeah. So the ant is existing. She's there in a form. She's still the ant, but she's existing in that kind of like the zone between light and death. She's not outside enjoying herself. She's not in a grave. She's just there. And yeah, it's clear to make the connection between Proust himself in his later years.
Right, so where was the... Oh, yeah, and then you get the preparation. So immediately afterwards, at one side of her bed stood a big yellow chest of drawers of lemon wood and a table that served at once as a pharmacy and as a high altar. So you're being prepared for the visit to the church that's going to occur very shortly.
Yeah.
And I love this. Like it follows on over a few lines later. She would hold out for me to kiss her sad brow, pale and lifeless, on which at this early hour she would not yet have arranged the false hair, and through which the bones shone like the points of a crown of thorns or the beads of a rosary. I'd argue that is uber Proust. It's the finding of such small details, linking it to an incredibly profound symbol, in this case religious symbols.
Yeah.
And that in turn is embedded within a seemingly innocuous narrative about a small boy at his aunt's, which is soon to be linked to a visit to a church, which is then linked to concepts of mortality, and on and on and on. Look, these layers within layers within layers, like an extremely complicated French gâteau. I haven't had my lunch yet.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a hissy fit. I've got this stand and it keeps dropping. I have a droopy stand. Everyone can fanar in the comments.
What is it? The camera stand?
No, it's like a frame that you put your my Mac on, and I will investigate. But I just hate objects; they defy me, and I get angry.
So tighten the screws a little bit.
I'll work something out. But if people see me smashing a very expensive Apple Mac on the floor, it'll be entertaining if nothing else.
Yeah, it will be.
Forever Trey's gone on a bit of a a very interesting disposition about biscuits. Tons of fig rolls that get mushed or damaged that haven't fallen on the floor get ground into dough and put back through the process with new fig. They're denser. All right. So in the world of fig rolls, there's like a hierarchy of reconstituted figs.
Well, fig rolls exist in a twilight zone, don't they? They're neither moist like cakes nor crunchy like biscuits. They are the twilight.
And also, I'd argue only the living dead. Yes, Coxie, with a name like yours, I wouldn't start making fun. The living dead, it's only Nosferatu-like disciples eat fig rolls. I honestly think it's the food of the half-dead, because I remember my old grandma trying to foist them on me when I was younger. I have PTSD fig roll syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah, they're very strange. My mum loves them. She every time I go home, she's got packs and packs of the ones. But yeah, they just.
Oh
I
no,
didn't
no
know there's
offense.
anything
I didn't
else.
mean to
But
imply that you were the spawn of Nosferatu,
well,
Nosferatu's bride.
I am that as well. But Nosferatu.
As I've always said, though, I've been called whiter than Nosferatu's bum.
Oh, good to know, Paul.
Yeah. No, well, I'm not exactly sun blessed, am I? Right, where's your next bit then? Unless I wanted.
Yeah, do you want to jump in before the church? Because I mean, my
Yeah.
next section was the church, but you might have something more to say.
Well, they're going into the hallway. I think they go back in time, and this is what happens in Homer. Actually, they use jump. I think it's called ring composition. Before you start, don't say anything, and it's going back in time and then coming back to where you were. But they talk about Françoise when they first. She was been there years. And so as an even younger boy, that they're going to the aunties, and no sooner had we arrived at my aunt's dark hall than we saw in the gloom beneath the frills of a snowy cap, as stiff and fragile as if it had been made of spun sugar, the concentric waves of a smile of anticipatory gratitude. It was Françoise, motionless and erect, framed in the small doorway of the corridor, like the statue of a saint in its niche. Which, by the way, North Americans say niche, which I really don't like.
Niche, really?
Yeah. Of all the linguistic crimes that Americans commit, that is probably in my top 3.
The niche is the top.
Is it really difficult to say?
I've not heard that before. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you just say niche? Niche sounds like an itch.
Yeah. Niche sounds like someone when you were shaving and you catch yourself. It's like, oh, bugger, I've just niched myself.
I don't think they say that, bugger.
No. Right. Yeah, anything else I want to say? Because she's quite an important character, isn't she, Françoise, for young Proust, for Marcel?
Well, there's the whole psychology of giving the tip to Françoise, and she has to act surprised. And the whole relationship, again, in Search of Lost Time, that's something that's gone. Having a staff and having servants. And I think, isn't there a point made in this section, or we may have... I think it's in this section where they talk about, because the family were close relations to Aunt Leonie and because they were regular visitors, she invested much more time and care rather than people that she knew were only temporarily going to be around.
Yeah.
And there's a really interesting, because the mother shows any interest whatsoever in Françoise, she's disproportionately grateful. But there's the whole... I sometimes think in Marx's politics and stuff, it completely gets left behind. It's the way in which certain working class indentured servant type classes actually have a very complex relationship to their mistresses and masters. And it's a bit like, for those who don't know, there's a section in Hegel, the master and slave dialectic, where he goes into the philosophy and psychology of it's not as simple as you'd think, the master-slave relationship, because in lots of ways the slave can do things the master can't, and the master is totally dependent upon the slave. So all of those type of subtle, philosophical and psychological complexities are in the relationship with Françoise too.
Yeah, it's like a symbiotic relationship, really, isn't it? And I think that's why he spends so much time writing about her, because she seems to be like an incidental character, but not when you really kind of dig into it. The amount of pages that he writes about her is quite a lot.
And again, that's part of the, as we're reading through, it's the narrative technique, isn't it? He makes, and it's why I suppose the book goes on for thousands of pages, because seemingly incidental, seemingly insignificant details he makes a lot of, as you've just read, the trellis-like unraveling of a leaf. Not many writers, and if they did, they might base a large number of words, but they wouldn't do that chapter upon chapter for thousands of pages. That is the uniqueness that is Proust.
Yeah, complete digression. So this section is like the joke about asparagus that he keeps coming back to, isn't it? It's like they've been eating too much asparagus because Françoise is obsessed with asparagus. She keeps cooking them it for dinner.
Yeah, but if I misremembered, I think you find out later that it's because the young servant that Françoise doesn't really like is allergic to asparagus.
That's it. Yeah, so it's like her kind of, she's not a benign character. She does have this ingrained cruelty that we talked about before.
Yeah, and also she attacks the chicken, doesn't she?
Yeah, she smashes the chicken to try and kill it.
But she's like really offended that the chicken might want to try and defend itself and not die.
Yeah,
and the vicious side of Françoise comes out.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
Right, I think it's time that we get your.
We get
your first major quote.
I'm just having a quick scan through to make sure we're not missing anything important. But yeah, I mean,
that bit where I was talking about the servant psychology. They take no pains to make. She's talking about where are we?
There we go.
She was one of those servants who in a household seem less satisfactory at first to a stranger, doubtless because they take no pains to make a conquest of him and show him no special attention, knowing very well that they have no real need of him, that he will cease to be invited to the house sooner than they will be dismissed from it. Who, on the other hand, cling with most fidelity to those masters and mistresses who have tested and proved their real capacity, and do not look for that superficial responsiveness, that slavish affability, which may impress a stranger favourably, but often conceals an ineducable nonentity. And that speaks to me because, I'm going to lose it, this bloody computer. I really have always had a problem with insincerity. So you and I know that we deeply dislike each other at quite a profound, open level. But, the fake sincerity, like James does it all the time, he's like overly nice. Whereas the three of us really can't stand each other deep down. And
that's where the comedy comes from there, the tension.
Yeah, and that's what I like about Proust, that we'll see at various points. I think it's one of the major themes of the novel as a whole, that the comments like this introduce, is the concept, because he moves on to high society, and the book's about contrasts. So this is about one shut-in old lady and her servant. But later, you'll go into the most higher, rarefied echelons of society. And that's when the superficiality and the hypocrisy takes off. But if, and this is one of the wonders of the book, if you read the whole book, you see the parallels, you see the foreshadowing of things to come. But you've almost forgotten them by the time you get to them. So... In search of lost time, it's like in search of remembrance of things past. You actually live the experience reading the book because you've forgotten some of the linkages that are indubitably there.
Yeah.
I haven't used that word in ages, indubitably.
Indubitably, nice. I think as you go through the echelons of society, as you say, it's like the complexity of the relationships, it becomes more convoluted. And I think, he's definitely setting the scenes here. He's introducing... He's saying even within this small family unit, you've got these complex kind of interplays between different characters, and then when you get out into wider society, it's just it gets so many permutations. It's incredibly complicated.
Right, and then it's yada yada yada. She's talking to Françoise. Françoise is very grateful. So this is us making progress.
Madame Octave,
she.
Is there anything important here? Because I read these sections like this as, I go back and try to work out, okay, what's he trying to say here? But a lot of it is just, to me, is just the everyday conversations.
Yeah, and I think people see it, I'd counsel against seeing it just as filler, because what I think the importance is what I've just said about the contrast with what's to come in the future.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to jump ahead too much, but later on, it's not that many pages away. The Monsieur Venture and his daughter.
Yeah.
And her lesbian lover, and she spits on a photograph of the father. All of that is... I don't think that would have such a profoundly disturbing effect if you hadn't read all these pages. And I think that's one, if people struggle to appreciate or understand why he has to write this seemingly minutiae, I think it goes to what sets Proust apart. How many other writers would, inverted commas, waste this much time and effort on the seemingly insubstantial and insignificant. But in order to do these, tracking back with memory and involuntary memory, he has to create the sea of banality that suddenly these memories come flowing from. If everything's just like, car chases and police chasing people and action all the time, like Hollywood, how on earth would you create this sense of going back and having spontaneous involuntary memories? Because all your memories would be significant. And the whole point about the famous Madeline incident is it's a seemingly insignificant incident that at the time he didn't think was a significant part of his life. And I think that's the ultimate truth of the novel for everyone, is that things you remember or things that come back to you that you never would have thought would be significant at the time. And
no,
I think we've had this conversation.
No,
Sorry,
absolutely. But I get the sense with sections like this is like, as I'm reading it, I know there's something here, even though it seems just like an everyday conversation. I'm just like, what is it here? It's always in the back of my mind because, like you say, he doesn't waste a single word in the novel. Everything is done for a purpose. And it was just my question. I was really interested when reading sections like this. I kind of feel like, okay, where's this going? What's this about? And it's just interesting to get your opinion, Paul, as to like the general sense of like what am I missing as I'm reading this. And I think you're correct there. Like everything in the novel is important, and maybe this section here is foreshadowing something that's going to come later, but as you're reading it, you think, is this an important plot point? But when you get later in a novel, it's just like, I remember when that said that's a person to that, and all this happened here and stuff like that. It's just so
yeah, but forgive me, I think you risk being a bit too instrumental. There's also the concept I'm trying to explain of texture. He's trying to build up a reservoir, like a sea of texture from which it becomes more realistic. When the memories later on the novel come flooding back, you've experienced the inverted commas banality of what he's been describing. And then suddenly what would have been banal memories take on greater significance, because they're being experienced at a later part of his life when he's part of high society. And it's a different context. And it's hard to explain, but the dramatic effects he achieves in the novel couldn't be achieved without the contrast with the much more banal parts. And I think it's indicative of our society that so many people can't tolerate the slow bits. Because they're thinking, what, where's this going? What's the point? Where's the plot development?
So they want to fill the banal with something. It's like that feeling of banality and boredom must be filled with dopamine, must be filled with novelty and excitement.
And it's like criticizing Waiting for Godot, which is one of my all-time favorite pieces of literature, for saying, well, yeah, but nothing happens. It's like, well, sorry, that's a technical literary term.
It really is. Yeah. Liverpudlian technical term. How do you spell it, Paul? I've not seen that in the dictionary.
I have a really. Did you ever, when you were a kid, because this is probably before your time, there was one of these ridiculous linguistic phases when I was a kid where people would go Edna when they wanted to contradict someone.
No, I don't remember that one.
No, you mentioned.
I remember.
Well, it was the predecessor to that. It was Edna. And it was really, as you can imagine, we were talking about parrots before, having young kids in our family all doing it. And my mum said, the next person who goes Edna, I'm going to belt them. And she meant it. So I said to my little sister, who was like 3 years younger than me at the time, I said, I'm much better at Sabutio than you. And spontaneously she went, Edna. And
Sabutio, there's the memories flooding back.
Yeah, little table football. But I just remember my mum's arcing hand coming to belt my little sister around the head. And it was one of the most proudest Machiavellian moments of my young childhood. That I had manufactured the situation.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm revealing far too much.
We used to stick hardback books down our trousers. Like if we knew we were going to get smack, we'd stick a hardback book down the pants, and Mum and Dad would go give us a crack on the arse, and they'd be like, "Oh, what's that?" And we'd just run off laughing.
Stuart's relationship to literature.
Exactly. Yeah.
Edna. Right.
I think we can get to the church now, can't we?
Yeah, we've got to the church bit.
Yeah, I'm just going to bring up the old porch.
We need to get Darren to watch this and give me some psychological help.
Yeah, I think that would be a separate podcast. Dissecting Paul. Paul on the couch or something like that. Yeah.
The irony is I'm very seldom off the couch.
Paul on the other couch. But Paul moved to the other couch.
Yeah, my missus made a joke about if you had one of those heat maps.
Yeah.
It would be the most narrowly circumscribed heat map in human history.
Like an infrared camera in the house.
Yeah, an infrared would be like, this person technically is dead. The last time we saw this lack of mobility, it was a hibernating burr.
Yeah, it reminds me of those guys like in America, the ultra obese people when they die and they have to cut off the side of the house and get a big crane to take them to the mortuary. It's like
that's what I aspire to.
Yeah, so yeah, Jabba the Hutt.
Right, go on, go. You're itching to go with your colander quote, aren't you?
Yeah, I want to go with it. So he goes, "Oh, how I love the church." The church is really important to him, as we've ascertained in previous episodes. I think it's important that he says, how clearly I can still see it." Because it's just a memory that he doesn't need the Madeleine to recover it. It's just there in his mind. If he wants to remember it, he can think back, and it's such an important building. But we talked previously about the church being the focal point of the whole society of Combray, and later on we get into high society, we get into Paris. Would you say, Paul, when we get to the Parisian parts, like Paris lacks this physical focal point? High society lacks this physical focal point.
Yeah, I think he replaces it with my favorite is the Bergotte, who goes off to see the yellow wall of the Vermeer painting view of Delft.
Yeah,
I think he uses the sonata, Vonteur's sonata, as a representation of his relationship with what's her name, Madame Swan. So it gets replaced. I think the church, because you're in, and it's the notion of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's you become part of this increasingly immoral society, but the parts of the church, the spiritual, gets replaced to some extent by the artistic. So the music that's threaded throughout the sonata gets referred to constantly through the novel, and there's just that very touching desire to go and see the death of Bergotte, where he goes off to see the yellow wall of the Vermeer painting. So art takes on that quality, and in this section here, to bring it back to this, there is he describes it's the beautiful, and it's why I think I did a whole video on why I thought Proust was a Christian atheist, because he wrote this paper. I won't give you the full details, but I think it was 1905 in France. There was some state, the French term laïcité, or it's the secular. It's the secular notion in France. They have a very strong notion of the church is separated from the state.
Yeah.
So it came from the French Revolution.
Yeah.
But in 1905 there was a government act that separated church maintenance and all the money that went to the churches. I think technically the church doesn't own the churches. They basically get an allowance to look after them. So within French society, they were beginning to enact this act of government, and Proust wrote this essay vehemently arguing against it, and basically said, of all the things French culture has contributed to the world, there is no comparison to French cathedrals. And I read that, and it rather passed over me. And then I did some research, and in the video I give a load of examples of there are like nondescript towns in the middle of France have these absolutely stunning Norman cathedrals. They're better than, in a certain, they're not as big, but they're more beautiful than Notre Dame. They're stunningly beautiful. And you could do a whole tour of France just going to beautiful cathedrals in the middle of the countryside.
Yep.
And he makes the point that, Wagner had this notion of, is it Gesamtkunstwerk, the complete work of art that combines everything. And Proust argues that's what churches, that's what cathedrals do. It's the music, it's the sculpture, it's the painting, it's the stained glass, it's the general atmosphere, it's the history. Everything congealed and combined into these just absolutely amazing buildings. And what do we get? You know, Carphone Warehouse, or we get out-of-town shopping malls. And yet we're supposed to be the more advanced society.
Yeah, I mean, I think the churches exist in the UK, but they're not as big as the old Catholic countries. I mean, it's the same thing here in Spain. It's like every single town has got this historical church. You know, some going back even to like the time of the Moors. They've been reappropriated after the Aragonese and the Catholic kings kind of reclaimed the south of Spain. And you might find like an old Moorish temple, like a basically Islamic art that's been repurposed into a church in probably like the 1400s or the 1500s. And there's just not just history of one culture, it's like a layered history of different cultures built on top of each other. I mean, even some churches here are built on like Roman foundations. And as Proust is talking about here, that there's an interplay between the physicality of the church, the architecture of the church, time, and humans, as in humans physically alter the church. I mean, the quote here is quite significant because he's using what would be, you know, the lowest class of people, insignificant people, you know, the peasant women coming into church. The action of them walking into church causes these deep furrows, this colander effect on the actual building itself. So it's like, it's not just that time where there's the church, it's like the physical act of a human being interacting with the church, even in a very small, insignificant form of walking in and out of the church on mass on a Sunday, physically alters the church itself, which is quite profound.
Yeah, and I'm not neutral because I'm a lapsed Catholic, but I do think I'll never forget the funeral of John Paul II, which to me was the last proper pope. All these wishy-washy liberal anti-Latin mass imposters now. But anyway, that's a separate story. Do you ever remember John Paul II was in a little plain box, the coffin, and it was in the middle of St. Peter's Square. And I'll never forget, all the world leaders, Clinton and all these people were there looking on. And the way you could tell he'd actually orchestrated his own funeral, how he wanted it to be. But the world's most powerful people all having to stir in a little wooden box in the middle of this glorious architecture. And he's just basically saying, no matter how powerful you think you are,
you're insignificant.
You're going to end up in that box. And I just thought it was incredible the way, and it was, the whole effect was exacerbated by the fact it's around all the glory of St. Peter's Square. And I just think Catholicism, maybe more than any other religion, does symbolism brilliantly. And I think that's what Proust was saying in this 1905 essay in defense of the cathedrals.
It was just to draw on that. I mean, he talks about the noble dust of the abbots of Combray, you know, these very powerful, important people. But ultimately, they end up as the dust under the church. You know, very, very similar to that kind of the box analogy.
And you've got, I'm just thinking, because I did it recently, Hamlet referring to Gertrude, or people, what is this quintessence of dust? You know, Yorick, in the graveyard. It's
ashes to ashes, dust to dust, abbot to flooring. But he goes on and on this whole section. I mean, what's it? It's about 2 or 3 pages, isn't it? One of them was, he's talking about, I guess these are the stained glass windows.
I find that interesting because, you know, you probably know more about this than I do, about the whole, but in terms of theories about media communication technologies and stuff, Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message, and all these type of things.
Yeah,
I've always been fascinated by, I think one of the best examples of the medium is the message. You know, when McLuhan says the content of one medium, how does he phrase it? The content of a film, for example, is the previous medium. It's a novel. And I think the point McLuhan makes is, as the media evolves, as novels turn into films, there's a cannibalization of the previous medium format. But there's not enough, as you would probably agree, in terms of media philosophy. There aren't enough writers who look at how the media actually have their effect. And when it comes to stained glass windows, on their own, stained glass does nothing. With the light behind them and the context of a beautiful building, everything comes together, and there's like an emanation. I must be bizarrely like a stained glass window nerd, but there's something, it's hard to explain the radiance that comes out of a stained glass window. And the clumsy point I'm trying to make is it's a concatenation of contributory factors. And the beauty, the aesthetic beauty that literally radiates out can't be identified in any palpable way.
Yeah.
But if you take away any of the individual ingredients, it no longer exists.
Yeah, and I think it's like, it's a good point that you bring up McLuhan, because it's not just the content. We can look at the narrative structure of a content, but what you're describing there with the stained glass window is like the content is part of the whole picture, but you're also alluding to some sort of physical phenomenological encounter with the light, with the feeling inside the church, you know, that goes beyond a narrative structure, but is part of the composition of, you know, you would consider a stained glass window as a medium. I mean, a good example of that is in Toledo, south of Madrid. Toledo Cathedral, to me, is probably the best in Spain. It's absolutely stunning. And at the back of the cathedral, they have this big wall. I mean, I'm not sure what the technical term is in a church, but these very big, like gold. It's like carved wood with gold panes, gold plated. They're not statues. I mean, you might know, Paul, from your choir boy days.
No, altar boy. I was never a choir boy.
Altar boy.
Stuart, they never made me sing in numerous ways.
But they're not statues in a church, but they're like almost like an altar, and they one at the back of this church in Toledo has a stained glass window behind it.
I think it's the screwed, or the screen. Basically, there's a medieval word. It could be screwed.
Yeah, I'll look it up and put it in the comments.
I think it's SCROOD would be my best guess, unless I've misremembered.
Yeah,
but there were these wooden backgrounds to the altar.
That's basically what it is, and it's like I'm gonna see if I can get a picture of it up, as it is. It's just mind blowing. Here we go. Cathedral Prima de Toledo.
While you're looking for that, Incontinent J in Texas said, "Yeah, I ate my first Madeleine this past weekend without even knowing it." The nurses in the care home should have told him, shouldn't they?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got the picture of it now.
How could you not know what you're eating? I'm worried for Jay. I think we have to have an intervention. We need to stage an intervention. Oh, look, they were serving them after mass with coffee and donuts.
Share screen. Here we go. I'm going to bring the screen up now. Entire window, entire screen. There we go. Yeah, check this out. And just the colors of this cathedral. And
it's not up on the screen, Stu.
Is it not coming up?
I'll add it to the stage. There you go.
Add it to the stage. There we go.
I just did something technically enabling.
Technically better than me. Yeah, thanks, Paul.
I'm in shock.
Capilla. Yeah, in Spanish it's capilla.
Could you look up whether it's screwed, SCROOD in English, Old English, or whether I just imagine that?
Screwed, yeah.
Careful how you spell it.
That's coming up as chapel, shrine, sanctuario, gremillo. I'll look it up later before we get too much digression, but
can you have too much digression, Stuart?
On the Proust podcast, never enough, Paul. But I mean, talk about information overload. When you stand in front of this thing on a sunny day, and you've got all these kind of, you know, they're not even the colors of the rainbow. It's like there seems to be additional colors that emanate from this thing. like you say, that you get a feeling from it that's not just like consuming a narrative that you would in a film or even a book. It's yeah, I can see where the concept of like a spiritual feeling or an emanation or an encounter comes from, that there's something concrete there and something phenomenological from something like this. And I'm not religious, but every time I go to places like this in Spain, it just absolutely blows my mind.
Right. Sorry, I've become obsessed. It's SCROOD, as far as I can tell. Has absolutely nothing to do.
Screwed. Yeah, be careful. You might get some dodgy websites coming up.
No, but I've just someone needs to help me. There was a word beginning with SC, screed or something. There's something to do with church altars in medieval times, or I've just really have had a stroke. Right, so that was a digression with
It's a big digression. Yeah, good fun though.
The Cathedral of Toledo.
It was, yeah, highly recommended. Best one I've been to in Spain.
So then it's describing the window, and I like the way it's the. I'm just looking at. Yeah, its windows were never so brilliant as on days when the sun scarcely shone. So that if it was grey outside, you might be certain of fine weather in the church. And I can relate to that because the Liverpool Catholic Cathedral, which is hyper-modern, which I've done several videos on because I'm obsessed with it.
Paddy's Wigwam.
Yeah, Paddy's Wigwam. That on dull days, the windows radiate. It's incredible. And most days in Liverpool are dull, weather-wise. Certainly not out on the streets. So, yeah, it is. What he's saying here is actually, really true.
But it's that sense of not just kind of audio when you go into a church, that quiet sereneness. It is. There's something about the light. I mean, even in the most simplest of church, there's something there.
But that's something as well that people don't, I think, factor in enough. When it was built, Paddy's Wigwam in Liverpool, it doesn't look that big, but because of its circular shape, I think at one point it was the building with the most cubic air. And if you hear a choir sing in the Catholic Cathedral, it's not the single most cubic air, but it was one of, for its relative, it's not that big. It had this huge amount of cubic amounts of meters of air. And when the choir sings, their voices get lost. And again, that fascinates me because it's about the singing. It's not in a tightly soundproof singing studio where every aspect of the voice gets picked up. It's the opposite. The voice gets lost in the immensity of the air above it. And when you go into a big cathedral, the silence is, you can't replicate that in any other type of building. Because again, I don't think people think of sound in the way they think of light. But churches combine, you've just made me think, they combine not just the light that he's talking about here, but also the lack of sound, or the way in which sound is filtered through the vast amount of air, because they're such, relatively empty buildings. It's incredible. Yeah,
no, that they just got incredible acoustic quality. I mean, even the Protestant cathedral in Liverpool, that was one of the biggest, or that was the biggest church in the world at one point in history, wasn't it? The biggest religious building. I read that recently. Am I mistaken? It was at least the biggest Protestant church.
No, there'll be somewhere in South America that's bigger, but I think it's
one of... Historically, when it was built, it was the biggest, I think.
I don't know, but it is huge. And ironically, it's much more traditional than the Catholic one.
Yeah.
I am going to throw this computer out the window.
Yeah, it keeps going down. It's just very slowly. It's almost like it's on the computer's on a pan. It's like panning down.
It's a metaphor for my life, and its hopes and expectations.
Yeah, down the pan.
Yeah, slowly sinking into the abyss.
Absolutely.
Of ennui. And I'm reduced to talking with Stuart about a book that never ends.
Whilst Wednesday afternoon.
Whilst an incontinent man in Texas heckles us like a character from the Muppets.
Oh, Camus would have a lot to say about this situation, wouldn't he? I think he'd be getting a good buzz off this. I mean, just to move past the church now, I think this is the key point Proust is making. this idea of four-dimensional space is, I think we're getting into Star Trek territory here now, aren't we? The fourth dimension being time. So he's giving a physical quality to time here. They're saying, look how this one building brings all this together.
Yeah, and it's also back to what I said earlier about when he talks about the figure in the stained glass, with like the king being like a character in a pack of cards.
Yep.
He's talking about the most profound aesthetic, spiritual embodiment, and then he compares it to a pack of cards. It's the constant, the sublime, and the banal linked together.
Yeah.
Which I think is very Proustian.
Yep, very, very Proustian. He's coined the term.
Yeah, and there's the bit about the snow, the sleet on the windows. So in another window, a mountain of rosy snow, at whose foot a battle was being fought, seemed to have frozen the window also, which it swelled and distorted with its cloudy sleet, like a pane to which snowflakes have drifted and clung, but flakes illumined by a sunrise, by the same doubtless that purpled the reredos of the altar with tints so fresh that they seemed rather to be thrown on it for a moment by a light shining from outside, and shortly to be extinguished, than by colours painted and permanently fastened on the stone. And at your point, he goes on, and all of them were so ancient that you could see here and there their silvery antiquity sparkling with the dust of centuries, and showing in its threadbare brilliance the very chords of their lovely tapestry of glass.
Mm.
So it's the physicality of time, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, time is something you can... it's not just a abstract concept. It's got a physical dimension to it as well. There we go. Yeah, we talked about this, I think, previously, but this bit, when he talks about the jackdaws, this is too cool. So yeah, this idea that when you walk past the church, you have these birds, the jackdaws. They're a bit like crows, aren't they, or ravens?
A member of the corvid genus.
Corvid genus, that's it. And it struck me this because it's very similar to the church in my hometown, where they would have these jackdaws. I think they were rooks actually back home, but
they're corvids as well.
Corvids as well, yeah. And
I'm corvid heckling you now. Go on. Keep going.
Mad. And crow, magpie, and you get in your church, and especially on an evening, you get these lovely crisp winter evenings, a very clear sky, and they lived in the bell tower probably, and they would just all fly out, and you'd hear these saying wah, 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 and they would just fly down and roost again. And I think there's just a visual kind of aspect to it that I really relate to, but it's also the same idea that Proust talked about this before, the connection between man and nature. So here, historically, this isn't, we're not into like full techno enlightenment yet. We're not into full mastery of nature. There's still that connection between human lived experience and the natural world. And the building itself, the church itself, is a human construction, but it still is constructed within nature. It's not in opposition to nature. Does that make any sense? It's very Heideggerian, I think.
Yeah, and it also reminds me, I can't help, when I read all this, although he was writing it in the it got published in the 1920s, so he's writing it just prior to that, but also he's talking about his childhood, so he's actually talking roughly in the late 1800s, when he was a child, some of these memories. And so when he's writing about this church tower and stuff, I can't help but think of the Impressionists, of Van Gogh, who did various, to your point, he did various paintings of an old church tower, and there are crows around it. And yeah, the Impressionists seem to, just before, again, in Remembrance of Things Past, just before that era was gone. So I've mentioned in previous videos, Camille Pissarro used to do these beautiful paintings of country roads with the occasional horse on them. And they're disappearing off into the distance. but they're also disappearing from reality because the roads and the railways began to displace them. So all of this relates to, he's describing something that no longer exists. It's quite poignant.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it exists, but it's slowly going away. It's slowly dissolving. No, I think we talked about this in probably one of the very first podcasts. I think we jumped forward quite a little bit. But is this it's the friend of the family, isn't it? Well, did you remember Monsieur? I can't remember the name. But this is the encounter, very similar to the church. Is like they come across him in the street, don't they? It's Marcel and his father.
Yeah.
And they talk to a friend, and I've every useless thing in the world in my house there. The only thing wanted is the necessary thing. A great patch of open sky like this. Always try to keep a patch of sky above your life, little boy. So what interests me about this is that the sky itself is not a material thing, really, isn't it? I mean, he's talking about this in the abstract sense here. So we've talked about things, we've talked about physical things as kind of encoding time, but then suddenly you have this concept of a sky as a bit like a horizon. So I personally think Proust is using the sky here maybe as a metaphorical substitute for time itself, or potential time, time yet to come. What do you think?
Well, weren't you going to witter on about the Heidegger's fourfold, which I shudder to mention?
Well, we could come to that in a sec. Yeah, I was thinking, just looking at the clock, I was thinking we could maybe put that on hold for the moment. Or do you think that would kind of make it make more sense? What do you think?
No, I just like teasing you with your Heidegger fixation.
Right. So I think Heidegger's fourfold. You set me off there. I think Heidegger's fourfold really fits into this section of the novel, especially with the church, because you've got Heidegger's fourfold is this concept that the later Martin Heidegger brought together, and it's earth, sky, divinities, and mortals. And the easiest way to think of it is, I think Heidegger uses the word gathering, doesn't he? It's like all the elements, I mean, this is to kind of bastardize Heidegger a bit and reduce the impact. I think you have to go away and read it yourself. But he's basically talking about how the interconnectedness of experience, of human experience. And he puts it in very poetic language, which is not, I don't think it's meant to be taken literally, but you've got the earth itself. So it's like the dust, which is the dust Proust alludes to when he's talking about the church. So the earth is like the physicality. So it's like the soil, physical things. And then you have the sky, which I think Proust talk about the church, the steeple at one point. It's the finger pointing
obsessed with
the
steeple, yeah.
Yeah. So in Heideggerian terms, the sky is like the temporal aspect of reality. So the rhythmic structure, the day to day, the comings and goings of the sun and the moon. So the earth grounds in physicality, but then the sky is like the opening. It's like the possibility. But then Heidegger also brings in the divinities. So a lot of people misread him as being very religious. This is the gods itself, but I think this is like the spiritual pavement in Proustian terms. So the divinities for people is something that points towards the sacred. So something beyond the sky, something beyond the earth, the physical and the temporal. But that also affects our day-to-day lives. So maybe not so much nowadays, but certainly in more religious times, in Proustian times, the divinities in the church, the saints, etc., were an informative part of reality. But the most important part is Heidegger's fourfold is the mortals, is essentially the human beings, people, is where all these other three things kind of they concretize, I guess the word would be to use. It's like everything comes together in human experience, in day-to-day experience. And you have all this in this scene. You've got the divinities in the church, you've got the sky, the steeple, you've got the earth, the dust of the bishops, and then you've got the mortals, the peasant women with their gentle friction going back in and out of the church. And Heidegger wrote this. I mean, I'm not sure if he read Proust or not, probably not, but he wrote all this. I think it was in the 30s when he started putting this together, definitely into the 40s. But it's just such a parallel.
Yeah, and the weird thing about the sky is, again, it's what I love about Proust is I don't think most people, they look at the sky if it's a particularly beautiful sunset or sunrise. But because of its very evanescent, non-material nature, I don't think people spend an awful lot of their day thinking about the nature of the sky.
Yeah.
But actually, I'm just trying to think from my own life. I remember, bizarrely, one of the most beautiful skies I've ever seen was in Las Vegas. We were in a motel and we'd been traveling across country. And I think we spent 2 nights in Las Vegas. But it was late one night, and the whole neon lights of the city, we were on the outskirts, was shining up into the night sky.
Yeah.
And it was actually stunningly beautiful.
Yeah.
It was in a way that, and I think it's the lack of expectation. I thought Las Vegas was going to be one of the most ugly places on earth, which in the daytime it was. But at night, when it almost like got reabsorbed back by the desert, and the way the light worked. And then I remember an Italian woman said to me, she made a comment about that she loved the British sky. And I thought, well, what are you talking about? Because she said it never stops changing. And I went to see her in Italy, and I saw what she mean. There's part of continental Europe, and especially in continental America, the sky is more vast. It's huge, and it stays the same for a lot longer.
Yeah.
And there's something weird. The sky in Britain is so bloody small in a way, because there aren't any vast expanses of flat land. And because it's an island that's surrounded by very active currents in the sea and God knows what, the clouds never stay still.
No, they bloody well don't. It's very active, isn't it?
But these are all things, these are all things that you don't think about. And I think Proust makes you think about in little sections like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something the artist and the poet is acutely aware of, but in our everyday lives, we're just not aware of it. I mean, I've got some photos. I remember spending some time in next to a reservoir outside of Madrid, and we were swimming in the reservoir in an evening, and the sunset was just stunningly beautiful. Like basically, the air itself took on the color of the sunset, and I've got these photos, and it's just everything is like iridescent pink, and then the moon came up. It's like a full moon in the background, so you had the kind of the silver light of the moon mixed into the blue of the water, mixed into the pink of this sunset, and it was like the world was glowing. It's absolutely incredible.
Except what would be interesting, when you took the photo never ever replicates
never did justice.
The atmosphere.
Exactly. Yeah, you couldn't feel it. You could feel, it was almost like you could feel the light touching your skin, but you're not going to get that in the photo.
Which it's back to your point. I think that's what Proust is describing in this section when he visits the church. It's the physicality of experience. And again, reading novels can be, you're obviously distanced by the words, and yes, things like the Iliad and the Odyssey can emotionally involve you.
Yeah.
But without using a pretentious term, there is a phenomenology in Proust, the experience of what it's like to experience life. I'm struggling to think of any other writer who conveys, and this goes back to the point I made earlier about the so-called boring bits are needed, because that's part of the phenomenological experience of what the passage of time is like.
Yep.
The passage of time for most people is not a constant series of eventful things. It's dull patches followed by, and didn't Hitchcock say something like, art is life with all the dull bits removed?
Yeah, he did indeed, yeah.
But Proust's art is life with the dull bits included.
Yeah.
Which is actually more accurate portrayal of what life is.
Yeah.
And particularly this podcast.
the podcast of boredom.
No one can ever accuse us. Stuart,
just to jump in quickly. Yeah, you go first.
No, I was just going to make a glib point that no one could ever accuse us of under-providing boredom and banality in a Proustian type way.
Yeah. No, I just very quickly, when you're talking about phenomenology, I mean, this goes back to being in time for Heidegger. A fundamental attunement, I think it is boredom is one of the most fundamental attunements in Heidegger's mood. So boredom for Heidegger was existence stripped of distractions, and it put you in a specific mood. And I think from memory is this is one of the most important things for Heidegger, is you can't really get into a phenomenological analysis of human being, of Dasein, without understanding boredom. That boredom in a sense is like a way into it. I think for Kierkegaard, it's like anxiety is a way into deeper philosophical questioning. For Heidegger, boredom is a way into fully understanding human existence.
Well, also, as you're talking, I'm thinking it's no coincidence that Beckett wrote one of his first published pieces was Proust and the concept of habit, and the way in which habit is a way in which it's quite Heideggerian as well, but habit is the way in which we encounter life, and we're not overwhelmed by life's experience. We deal with life through our habits, and then occasionally eventful things break through the habit. But we don't tend to think of habit as a filtering device.
No.
But otherwise, without habit, you'd be overwhelmed. And it does intrigue me in the modern screen culture. What is the role of habit? You mentioned dopamine hits before, but can habit, in the Proustian way, in the Beckett type way of boredom, it struggles to exist in a world that's full of dopamine screen-based hits?
Well, this is where the mental health issue comes in. I mean, it's like more and more of an issue now, and I think, you know, there's hard science to back it up that without boredom, with just constant dopamine hits, it's actually very bad for your health. It's very bad for your mental health, and it can lead to depression, it can lead to anxiety, it can lead to all these things that a lot of people are suffering from nowadays. Because I think it's in neuroscience terms, the brain needs those moments of destimulation, of boredom, to basically reconsider, to reconfigure, to reorder itself, to codify short-term memory into long-term memory, to physically flush out toxins from the brain itself. So to be constantly stimulated is bad for your health on a physical sense.
So what I'm hearing is we should get a government grant for this series.
We should apply to the National Lottery, and then get a grant. Absolutely.
Right, did you have something else to show us?
If you want.
No, sorry. I thought you had something queued up. I can go to...
No, it sounded like a bit like no, it was a good time to jump into this, because I think we've got 15 minutes left, and I think we're doing well. I think we've nearly got it. Giotto, Paul, you're the art expert. Fill us in on Giotto and Padua and the Arena Chapel.
I couldn't tell you much, to be honest. They're just I find them interesting because they're so dark. And when he describes them, we're going to see them. You got them to pull up, have you?
I'm gonna pull them up now. Where you're filling the moment.
Yeah, it's the darkness of medieval times. It's the Giotto are that they're exaggerated. They're allegories of different vices.
Yeah, seven virtues and 7 vices.
Yeah, and they are, again, there's something quite alienating. It's like in modern times when like a horror film tries to be horrifying, it can be a bit forced, and because you know where it's coming from and you're a bit immune to it. But there's something about, you know, middle-aged, medieval representations that are quite disorientating. I think they're quite unnerving.
Yeah, and I couldn't imagine at the time what it would have been like for people, you know, because they believed if they did these things or they didn't do these things, you're going to go to somewhere pretty nasty and Boschian, aren't you? You're gonna go to hell. And it's interesting because in this section of the novel, Proust links is like the other maid. Is it the maid that
she's pregnant.
Françoise doesn't like? Yeah, so she's pregnant, and he links her to charity. So in this chapel in Padua in Italy, is it 12th century? I think it's 1303.
Yeah,
and 1304. This Giotto did these frescoes, and they're still in fantastic condition. I think there's a limit on who can actually go in and see them. You have to book months in advance.
Well, they used it was an egg tempura. They had this the way they applied the paint, and they used egg yolk. And the irony is, you know, modern painting techniques are no better at making, you know, almost everlasting paint jobs.
Probably worse, yeah, with that kind of industrial and synthetic dyes. I don't think they last as long as natural dyes, do they? But yeah, where is it? Charity. Where art thou, Charity? I think it's back. Yeah. So he likens the maid to Charity, and it's quite interesting because I think he alludes to the fact that the representation is, you know, it's not a very skinny, you know, nymphian lady. It's a realistically proportioned lady. which is very similar to how a pregnant lady would look with a frock on. But then he also links it.
These are the ones when I was referring to the just disorientating.
Devices.
But also, my point about the effect of Proust, you get the disorientating effect from Proust because he's prepared the way with all the banal stuff. That's just like the two images you've shown. There's the everyday banal woman, and then Giotto takes it that stage further.
But in the section, he basically brings on kind of quite visceral, like, language. He says, similarly in the case of the poor kitchen maid, was not one's attention incessantly drawn to her belly by the weight which dragged it down. So, we think of pregnancy and
that's getting a bit personal to me, Stuart.
We think of pregnancy and motherhood as this wonderful thing, but it's actually quite a visceral, kind of physically dark to some extent. Are not the thoughts of the dying often turned towards the practical, painful, obscure, visceral aspect, towards that seamy side of death, which is, as it happens, the side that death actually presents to them and forces them to feel? Again, it's one of these Proustian sentences that goes on comma after comma, and which far more closely resembles a crushing burden, difficulty in breathing, a destroying thirst, than the abstract idea to which we are accustomed to, given the name of death. There must have been a strong element of reality in those virtues and vices of Padua, since they appeared to me to be as alive as the pregnant servant girl, while she herself seems scarcely less allegorical than they. And that's all just based on this one medieval fresco in Italy.
Have you got the ones? Are there any others? Because I seem to remember they get, not disturbing's the wrong word.
I've got some of them. Yeah, I haven't got all the vices. I think that's the most disturbing because it's basically. I went on a bit of a deep dive just before this morning. I was reading about the medieval concept of envy.
Yeah.
So was it? I'm trying to think of the Spanish author. Was it Unamuno?
Unamuno. He wrote Mist, the novel.
Yeah. Abel Sanchez, and who's the other guy as well? It'll come back to me in a second. Ortega de Gasset. So both of those wrote about this idea in Spanish society that envy was the deepest cultural wound in Spanish society, and the concept of envy in Latin cultures and especially in Spanish culture and medieval Catholicism, it's so much more deeper. So the mal de ojo, the evil eye, the concept of the evil eye. It's like envy is a concept of looking out and looking at somebody with envy, but then also the envy looks back in at you, as in it affects your soul as well. It kind of fundamentally reorganizes who you are. And I think the fresco just sums it all up. And it's very demonic, isn't it? With these kind of weird ears and like what looks like horns or something like that. Fires of hell burning in the background. But
also the concept of being burnt up by envy.
Yeah. And then we've got justice and injustice. And what I quite like about these two frescoes is, what's the difference between justice and injustice? One's a vice, one's a virtue, but
the things that, as you're speaking, the thing that strikes me is the way in which Marcel, as a young boy, is having these thoughts. His experience of life is interspersed and interpolated with these type of mythical images. Just like the ancient Greeks in the Odyssey and the Iliad, they practice rituals. The concepts of the gods and how the gods interfered in their lives was an intrinsic part of their understanding of the world.
Yeah.
And it all goes to, there's a richness to Proust's experience of life that's completely informed by art and literature. That's one of the major themes, and music, all the way through the novel. He's not just experiencing life in this shallow way. And it goes back to the visitation to the church. The church is this physical embodiment of the passage of time, but more than that, it's the symbolism contained within the church. It's all the things you've shown here.
Yeah.
And they are quite they get into your psyche. You know, these aren't particularly pleasant images.
No, this is. I think it's desperation. This is one of the vices. Yeah, it's desperation. So we've got envy, infidelity. So we've done injustice, wrath.
Oh, my friend that I know so well.
It's like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, doesn't it? The face, something from a Universal Monster movie. I thought it said incontinence.
No,
Inconstancy.
That's Jay's patron saint.
This is Jay's one. Foolishness as well. Yeah. And I mean, even the virtues, there's just a sinister aspect to them, isn't there? It's kind of fortitude, prudence.
Jay's saying incontinence ain't a sin. No, but it is a vice. But it's also the way in which, if you think of the present woke culture, whereby nothing can be discussed that might risk triggering you, and yet what those Giotto things show is that Proust's whole experience as a boy was being reminded of quite disturbing images or disturbing ideas about purgatory or the vices. And again, it's the mental fortitude that builds up versus the complete absence of any discussion of anything that might be even vaguely upsetting in today's world. And what are the psychological consequences of that?
I don't even think it's just a woke thing. I think woke is one side of the cultural culture wars aspect. Is that we're in a society now where there's many people, whatever political side of the spectrum you fall on, there's an inability to discuss difficult things. It's almost, we want to take the analogy of the end of history. The end of history wasn't a Hegelian, perfect summit. The end of history was the inability to continue with history, that we can only look back. We can only close our eyes to complicated matters. We can't think through them anymore. We can't engage with difficult subjects. And I just think that's a universal thing now. That's on every aspect of the political spectrum.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to make any left-right point, but it goes back to my channel's constant bugbear is the loss of literacy. And this is the point I'm making about the Giotto. The Giotto images segue and interpolate Proust's writing because, to use that horrible word, there's a holistic relationship between the two.
Yeah.
But we live in this fragmented screen-based culture. And this is my whole, people might wonder why I'm so bloody obsessed about the whole Odyssey and Christopher Nolan, because that's the last refuge of these type of allegorical resources. And it's being churned up by the Hollywood machine.
Yeah. Can you think, Paul, of any? It doesn't necessarily need to be a film or a TV program, but any cultural event nowadays that really deals with difficult subjects? And does anything come to mind initially? I'm trying to think myself, but
well, things like I think I've always said we're in a golden age. It may have already ended of TV. I think Breaking Bad was a truly wonderful exploration of Walter White was a tragic figure because at the very end he dies with a smile on his face because he finally got to do the one thing that he was good at and gave him pleasure, which wasn't moral.
Yeah.
And I found it was a very postmodern contemporary take on the idea of finding something, a meaning in life. Walter White found meaning in being a drug dealer. But the drugs were incidental. It was the machinations, it was the chemistry, it was everything brought together, made Walter White an Odysseus-like a character, very cunning.
I was going to say, it was he got to enact his cunningness. He wasn't he wasn't a modern man, reduced to the banality of waking up every day, going to the office, coming home to a wife that doesn't love him, having hobbies that he's really not interested in. He got to live the Odyssean hero's life, didn't he?
But also, yeah, but why it was a wonderful work of art was that deep down he was such a flawed character. So he walked away from a potentially, being a billionaire out of sheer spite and narcissism and, hurt pride it was never fully explained. He just didn't feel comfortable with his girlfriend's rich family.
Yeah.
He had this insecurity that he masked with arrogance and malevolence.
Yeah.
And in that sense, I think Breaking Bad is one of the few modern artistic things I can think of that deals with humanity in its full complexity, warts and all.
Yeah.
And throwing out there as well, Mad Men, despite the fact, we can talk about this on another occasion, but Matthew Weiner, the director, was a Weiner. He completely undermined. No, he misunderstood his own work. It's absolutely hilarious. But the end of Mad Men and the idea that you can turn a universal feeling of brotherhood and goodwill into an advert for Coca-Cola is the essence of the shallowness of contemporary capitalist society. And that's captured in Mad Men brilliantly. The Sopranos, he's another Greek tragic character.
Oh, Sopranos, yeah. Absolute classic, yeah.
So I'd say...
So it exists, yeah. There's still these little flashpoints of brilliance.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't want to go on and on about it, but I think Breaking Bad was truly stunning. And then you've got the after effects in Better Call Saul.
Yeah.
He's almost like a Beckett character working at one of these... it's not a bagel shop, is it? One of these dough-making cinnamon bun. That's how he ends his days, having been this kingpin lawyer. And he's an Odysseus character, except my only problem with Better Call Saul is there's a hokey ending where he apologizes and goes to prison just for the love of a good woman, which is ridiculous, deviant behavior.
So the Netflixization of contemporary media, isn't it? We've got to have the happy ending, or we've got to have it all lashed out. We've got to tag on the romance.
Yeah, which that annoyed me, but hey ho. And Coxey brings down the tone as ever by advocating for Mr. Ben.
Mr. Ben, oh, that's a Proustian flashback.
Yeah, I think that's just because James likes the idea of men changing in dark changing rooms, and we won't go down that road.
No, let's not
go
down
family
there.
channel.
Yeah, it's been a clean show so far.
Right, so
at the end.
Is it going to be another couple of weeks we do Proust again?
2 weeks, yeah. Two
weeks we do Proust. End of the month, get reading Frankenstein and Moby Dick, please, if you have the time.
Yep.
And thank you all for your attention and the comments. And goodbye.
Bye.
Oh, God, I almost did it again. I pressed the wrong button.
Did you lock yourself out?
Yeah.